quick. Hey, congratulations on your new documentary, My Omaha.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great experience at Slamdance so far, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it was showcased at one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world at Slamdance. How was it? I mean, how proud are you of the festival?
Yeah, very proud. I mean, the reception on Sunday was as good as you could have imagined, you know. I think what was really gratifying was seeing how much it resonated with people from all different walks of life and different backgrounds, you know. A lot of people came up to me and talked to me about just how they were able to connect to different people in the film or talk about certain relationships they had where they could relate, you know. And that was the first time experiencing that resonance, you know, with a crowd. Um, for so long, when you make a documentary, you're kind of in a bubble and you hope that it's gonna have impact, but you don't really know until you get to play it. And so felt very, very good to put it out there and see that reaction.
Wow. And let's start with that obligatory question. What sparked you to make the documentary in the first place for My Omaha?
The jumping off point was trying to understand the tale of two cities, you know, which is kind of how people described Omaha when comparing the black community to the more kind of affluent white community, suburban Omaha. And not only the disparity that was happening, but also the way that we just talked about all of the issues in Omaha and how things were brushed under the rug and how people just seem to really avoid the conflict of talking about these really difficult, uncomfortable subjects. So it really started from this journalistic place of curiosity as someone who, you know, had grown up in Omaha and felt like they knew the city well. And then it was really through getting to know the activists, getting to know the history a little bit more, understanding kind of like what it meant to be a white filmmaker and kind of the role you have as the author of something and how that affects the storytelling that I decided that looking inward and kind of embracing my perspective and taking a personal approach, that I was going to be able to go somewhere much deeper. And that's when I ended up talking to my dad, and that, you know, became a kind of real core part of the film. So that's kind of how it all started.
In the case with your father, because you try to make it personal in so many different ways. How did you manage to finally convince him? Because especially with the subject matter, and he knew what he was going into.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that it didn't take much convincing, I think, because we both saw it as a way to try to connect with very limited time. You know, when he got that diagnosis, you know, a stage 4 pancreatic diagnosis is very grim. And so we didn't take any time for granted. You know, we thought there might only be a couple months of time. So we saw this as an opportunity to reconnect, and the way to do that was to try to unpack and untangle these massive ideological differences that we had when it came to politics, when it came to social issues, when it came to religion. So and he was very motivated to have these conversations because he felt before he left this earth that he wanted to make sure that he was instilling his point of view and his perspective to me, right? So he had his own motivation, I think, to be a part of this, and so I'm so grateful for that. And that's what makes it natural. I think if he was just doing it for me, it wouldn't feel as authentic. But he had stakes in this too, and I think that's what makes it so compelling.
As a filmmaker with personal stakes in this own film, how did you hold yourself together?
Yeah, th thanks for asking that. I mean, it was very hard. You know, you kind of see a little bit behind the curtain in that with the film when I do some of the kind of direct to camera diary stuff, you know. I mean, it was just it gets really messy when you make a personal film about someone you lose because, you know, you're trying to grieve and you're trying to mourn their loss, and yet at the same time you're a storyteller trying to, you know, create drama out of this, and it's very weird. Um, but I was lucky to get a lot of support from other filmmakers who had done similar personal stories and had good perspectives about how to balance that. a lot of friends, a lot of family were very supportive. And that's what's been great about premiering is a lot of people know how hard it was. And so it's cool for them to see us get this far and to sort of really kind of come back and share their kind words and their love has felt really cool.
On the other side of the coin of your film, tell us about how you wanted to approach these communities of Omaha and try to tell their stories into your film.
Yeah, I mean, it took I think building trust and time, and and also being very transparent about what this film was trying to be. With Leo in particular, the main activist in the film, I think we had many more conversations off camera than we ever had on camera, just talking about what this was, what my intentions were, what he wanted to share, what his thoughts were on this kind of a film. So, you know, um, I tried not to rush into anything because I knew, that the history of documentary filmmaking when it comes to social issues can oftentimes be ugly. People come in, they come out, and communities can feel sort of used, and I never wanted to do that. I was very mindful of that. So, yeah, it was a lot of building relationships, and I did realize after several years when people saw that I was showing up to things that most people weren't showing up to, and not only always to film, but sometimes just to learn. It did build up some credibility that was helpful, um, and I think that's how I was able to do that.
What did you learn about yourself as a white filmmaker doing these type of films and clips in this type of community?
Well, the big thing I was able to sort of understand was that I think I was giving myself a pass for a long time that I didn't really have um, any more growth to do because I'd already arrived because I was making this film and I thought I understood all the issues. And I'm like, oh, I get it, right? But I realized that there was a lot I had to learn. There was a lot I didn't know. Um, just when it came to some of my own biases and also just other, things from a maturity perspective, I was still learning. I was making this film when I was 23, 24, 25. These subjects are so complicated and so intricate that, I had so much to learn. So it was very humbling, I think, is what I really gained out of the whole thing is a big sense of humility and maybe a little bit less naivete as well.
Did you feel fortunate that some of the events in your film was due to perfect timing for yourself being at the right place at the right time?
Well, it's hard to kind of say because I think we really adapted the film based on how things were happening in society. I mean, the film begins before Trump was actually elected, and of course him winning and it changed so much about our culture that it naturally changed the film. I mean, undeniably, the summer of 2020 and what happened with the protests and the death of George Floyd had a huge impact on the film, both in what we captured in the storylines and how people talked about it, but also off camera, a lot of people kind of rallied behind the film because they knew I had been documenting stories around racial justice for years before it happened. So in that sense, the timing was, kind of in our favor. I think right now it's probably the most timely it could be because I never kind of imagined we were going to get this sort of part two of the Trump presidency, in a much more aggressive and intense way. And here we are, and the film is now done. And it's a very weird feeling because I always had wondered while making it, is this going to hold up? Is this going to retain its relevance? And I'm learning that it's probably more relevant now than it ever could have been any time in the last several years while making it.
One of the tough things of being a journalist and you called yourself a journalist um, in this film is to balance different perspectives rather than push a specific narrative. How tough was that for yourself, especially in this film?
Yeah, I mean, in this one, it's very tough to retain some of that when you're telling a personal story, because how can you be completely journalistically objective with a family member? There's so much personal things weighing on you. Um, but I do think that when it came to everything in the city that was happening, I really took, my role as a journalist very seriously about, getting all sides of the story and trying to be objective. And then I think that ended up bleeding into the conversations with my dad. I think in college, I was a primarily print journalist, and interviewed people all the time. And so I had a lot of experience turning interviews into conversations where I could let people, open up and share their perspective. So lucky that I kind of had that kind of training when I went into this.
You tell the tale of two Omahas perfectly in this film, but it could easily be interpreted as any urban city in America. Tell us why and describe Omaha, why it is a bellwether, for what it is here in the United States.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect city for this story to take place because, it's smack dab in the middle of America, um, and uh, and everything that happens here, there's a sliver of relevance that you could point to in almost any other city in the country, like you talked about. Omaha, in particular, was in the news during the election because it's actually a swing district, so it's very actually comparable to when people talk about like a Michigan or they talk about Arizona when it comes to being like a swing state. Omaha has that kind of purple, political nature to it. And also the history of it. I mean, a lot of people don't realize Malcolm X was born in Omaha, like we talk about in the film. So I think it's perfect because a lot of people don't know anything about Omaha. So when they come into the film, they're coming in with a blank slate. And Omaha can stand in and be a representative for any place in America, and people don't have any preconceived notions. So as a result, you're just able to watch these people and these stories, and kind of it'll feel like an American story, without having any kind of other thoughts about what Omaha might be or so on. So I think in that way, it's a great representative for a larger, more universal story.
So true, so true. Now, in the terms of meeting your heroes, you got to meet one of your filmmaker heroes, Bill Jersey. Tell us what was that like, and how you adored his film so much. I mean, I never heard of his film before, but apparently that film really resonated with you.
Yeah, he really was a hero as someone very young making a film about the same topic. And a lot of people in Omaha that got involved in the racial justice movement, and especially people who were interested in film, know about this movie. Locally, it's very legendary, because it still holds up, and it was nominated for an Oscar. It had tremendous success for its time. So that film was always on my mind. I mean, honestly, it's a big reason I filmed at a church in Omaha and got to know these people at a church, which is represented in the movie. So while, when I got kind of farther into the film, I always wanted to reach out to Bill, who made that movie A Time for Burning. Um, and I finally found his email and just reached out and asked if he wanted to connect and maybe watch some of what we had cut so far. And he wrote back a very enthusiastic email and made a proposition for me to come out and have a talk with him for the movie. And he said it'll make your film. I mean, it was such a shock the way that he opened up that I showed it to the people I was working with. I was like, "What do you guys think of this?" And they're basically like, "Well, it could be pure gold, or it could be like a total waste of time. Like who knows?" So I just hit him up and took him up on his offer and went out there and really spent the whole day with him. And it was incredible, to have all that time to have that interview. And then what was so unexpected is when we played extended footage for him at his house, he just started in real time giving commentary, and I told the person who was filming, I told him to bring the camera in the room because it wasn't in there. I was like, we got to get this, and and that's when the magic happened. I won't spoil it for people who have watched it, but I mean, it was such a great moment, and not only for the film, but just even for me as a person. It's one of those things where it meant so much to me, and obviously meant a lot to the film.
It is so great to get notes from your heroes, especially for your film.
Yeah, and especially when they're good. So that felt really good and validating. I got a chance to show Bill the cut, the completed film, rather, last month. He's 97 now,
Hmm.
and that was very cool. It's full circle, being able to do that. So lucky that he gave me the time and trusted me, and we'll be forever grateful for that.
That is awesome. And one major last thing, Nick, is did you have a full understanding of your father, in particular with his political views now, after doing this film? Because one of the things, like in politics, because like you mentioned, is that politics, stirs up a lot of bad blood. But in the realization that comes down to it, everybody thinks that they're doing a good thing. It's just everybody wants to fix the same problem, but with different tools. So do you finally understand that with your father through this
Yeah,
journey?
I do. I mean, the one thing that I really hope comes through is that my dad, whether or not you agree with him or disagree with him, he was a very principled person. He was a man of faith, um, and he stood up for what he believed was right. And ultimately, I think at the end of the day, I really respect that, even if there's things that I really disagree with, or even if there's things he said that I think are you know, not favorable to say. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because even from when he passed to now, um, the political landscape has changed so much that I often wonder like where my dad would sit, presently. But doing this whole thing just gave me a lot more empathy for his position. And I think that's what I hope the film can do for other people is, if you've never been able to see eye to eye with someone who's completely on the other side of the political spectrum from you, this film might be able to give you some insight into how to do that.
And after this film, I know you just started your journey with the film festival circuit with My Omaha. Do you have plans in the works for more filmmaking down the road, or are you going into the journalistic realm again?
Yeah, definitely want to make more films, and I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. I want to definitely collaborate more with other filmmakers, and help produce with some other folks. I've got ideas for some other films to do. Um, I feel very energized to do more. This was an 8-year project, and to finally get it off the ground after so much of it was sort of like a learning process, that I feel very motivated to jump back in actually and do it better this time around. So it's exciting to think about what's possible next. I mean, that's what's so cool about Slamdance is I've been meeting all kinds of very incredible filmmakers that are so inspiring. And so, after processing this, and of course, we have a lot of work to do to get the film out into the world. But in conjunction with that, I look forward to making something new soon.
And then let me wrap it up with one last question. As the audiences of Slamdance watch your film My Omaha, and hopefully more audiences at future film festivals or other avenues down the road will have a chance to watch My Omaha. What is the one most important take you hope they walk away with after watching your film?
I would say embrace the difficult conversation, with anyone in your life that you are avoiding, because of that discomfort or because of that potential conflict. I think that's the one message because I think that um, that's very universal for people. And I also think it's the crux of where we are right now between these two political sides that can't even talk to each other because it's too volatile and too hostile. And that's a challenge to people of any political background, I would say embrace the discomfort of that uncomfortable conversation, reach out, have it because and I can say very confidently in my life when I've done that, um, I've felt better. It's been better for me, it's been better for the other person when you do it, rather than letting things fester or just not having the kind of guts to do it. You just have to do it. So I hope that that's what people take away.
Well, Nick, we really appreciate your conversation about My Omaha. I could tell by watching this film and talking to you, you became a better person on your journey, and it's sort of your story. So, thank you very much, Nick, for carrying this talk with us.
Oh, of course. Wow. Thanks for the great questions, and I really appreciate the spotlight.
And let's do this again down the road when you come with your next film. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.